All right, hello everybody. Happy Friday. Glad to be here with you today on our monthly webinars around different topics on SAP Business One. And today we're going to hit about on the service management capabilities in SAP Business One. Good morning and happy Friday also to all our audience on our Facebook Live. Just to touch today on, we know that topic that not always used by many SAP clients. So we wanted to introduce you what you could do with service with SAP Business One. Today's session is going to be relevant for any type of client, SQL or HANA, or when it's available to only to one of them. You know, Ben and Hannah will share. We are presenting on a 10.0 environment, but again, 95% of what we're going to show is relevant to almost any previous version of SAP Business One. And very happy today to have Ben and Hannah kind of leading this webinar. So I'll let you guys present yourself. Ben, you can get started.
Thank you, Oren. Hello, everybody. My name is Ben Grassi. I'm happy to be here because a lot of my background is actually with service in SAP Business One, probably about 4 years of experience working within the service module. There's a lot in there, and I know it's usually an underutilized module within SAP. So I'm happy we're going to get a chance to dive into it and see what SAP offers in this area.
Awesome,
Good morning,
Ben.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Hannah Carey. I'm also a SAP consultant here at Pioneer V1. For the clients watching, we may have worked together on support tickets as well as projects. I'm also very excited to be here this morning, and let's get started. We have a lot in store for you today.
Yes. So objectively, we're going to focus on the service module, if that hasn't been clear yet, because there is a lot of opportunity there to improve your company's products and service to your customers. And even if you aren't doing field service in the traditional sense, there's other applications for the service module. So we're going to look into those and really expose what the service module has to offer. For an agenda today, we're going to start pretty high level with master data in the system and configuration options for the service module. We're going to jump into some new master data options available in the service module, such as equipment cards and service contracts. Once we have those, a good understanding of those, we are going to work in the core module of the service module, which is the service calls, and see how we can actually use the SAP Service mobile app to work those calls. And then we'll wrap up with some reporting options out of the box SAP. Make sure you have all the documentation for further learning and implementation of this, and open it up for Q&A. All right, so let's jump into it. The service module built right into SAP Business One, and like all the other modules in SAP, utilizes data you already have in there, such as business partner master data and item master data. And it also really focuses and utilizes serial number information, which you may or may not use now, but we are going to show how that gets set up and how it plays into the service module. There's several configuration options we're going to be talking about here, and other setup that we want to discuss. So let's hop right into our SAP 10.0 HANA environment. And we're going to start up in the administration module under system initialization and document settings. Under the per document tab here, we're going to jump first to service calls. And there's one setting option here that can be turned on, and it's enable multiple scheduling for service calls. This is new in 9.3, and previously, if you're not on 10.0 yet, this setting was actually under the general tab here, so just be aware. In 10.0, they did move it under the document settings. And you'll notice first and foremost, most importantly, this is grayed out because it is one of those settings that's once it is turned on, it cannot be turned off. So always make sure that you talk to your consultant before turning this on and make sure it's applicable to your business and test it out in the sandbox. With this setting turned on, though, SAP allows you to add multiple technicians to work on a service call at different times and different days and for different reasons. So it is a really powerful, flexible option that SAP offers here. Out of the box SAP, without this turned on, you can assign one technician to a service call at a time. With this turned on, you get that flexibility to add multiple technicians to work on a single service call. Again, different days, different times. Also under per document settings, under equipment card, is the ability to add multiple business partners to an equipment card. And this may be useful if you have a piece of equipment out in the field that multiple customers are utilizing, or this also gives you the ability to add both a customer and a vendor business partner type to an equipment card. So if you do have a piece of equipment or something out in the field with a customer and you also want to link the vendor to that equipment card, this option enables you to have that. And I will show that on the equipment card as I do have it turned on today. Now, if we go under setup and under general, not under general, under system initialization again, under general settings, and we go to the inventory tab, under the items sub tab, there's this option here, which I do have checked, to auto generate equipment cards. So the equipment cards is that record of equipment out in the field, and SAP actually has this automation built in that it will automatically generate those equipment cards for you anytime a serialized item is sold on a delivery or invoice. And we're going to walk through that process here. But again, this is one setting that you can turn on and off. It is, once it's turned on, it affects all serial items that are sold. But it is great automation because it reduces manual data entry in the system. And it also ensures that you don't forget to create an equipment card. So we will see how this functionality works in the system. Jumping down a little bit further now in our configuration, under setup and service, we have our contract templates. Now the contract templates are, as they sound, your templates that will be assigned to service contracts, and they set up your agreement with your customer. So we'll navigate to one here real quick, and Hannah's going to do a deeper dive on these. But you have things here that you can set, such as your response time and resolution time, days of service, included service items. You can add remarks to your contract and the duration for the contract. And again, this is just your template, but it allows you to assign this template to multiple service contracts, again, reducing that manual data entry and ensuring that you have level service with all your customers and on all your service contracts. Finally, here under service setup, we have queues, and these are the service call queues. So the service call queues allow you to more efficiently manage your service calls and effectively provide solutions for them if needed. And you can set up as many queues as you want for whatever reason you want. You have a queue manager you can assign. And then if you double click the row or choose the queue members button here, you can see the queue members that are assigned to this queue. Service call queues can be assigned on the service call so that you have multiple users able to work on that service call to resolve it instead of just one technician or two technicians. So this is just added flexibility to utilize in the system on the service calls. All right, so we've gotten through the configuration and setup options. And now I want to jump into item master data. And we already touched on this a little bit. And I'm going to navigate to an item that I already have set up here. And for most of the examples today, we're going to be discussing servicing a printer out in the field. But there is this setting here, as I mentioned earlier, called Manage Item By. And right now I have it set to serial numbers and to happen on every transaction. And so this is set up when you first configure your item master data. And usually when you service equipment in the field, you have serial numbers that you associate it to because you want to be able to track that equipment out in the field, especially if you're providing field service to it. So when this is set up like this, where you have manage item by set to serial numbers, every time you bring this item into inventory, such as on a goods receipt PO, SAP is going to prompt you to enter serial numbers for that item. And anytime you take it out of inventory, such as on a delivery or AR invoice, SAP will prompt you to also define the serial numbers for which item is leaving inventory. So this is a great way to track your inventory. And again, a lot of field service industries do utilize this. And serial numbers are really important in the service module, especially on equipment cards and service calls. And we'll see how those play in to the usage of the service module. And then the final piece of configuration, again in a module that once set up usually doesn't get touched a whole lot, in employee master data, there is functionality for roles here under the membership tab. Out of the box, SAP does come with several roles defined, and you can always define more. One of the out of box roles is the technician role, which I do have assigned here to our example technician today, Elizabeth Cameron. So the technician role, once it's assigned, it defines the list of users that you can actually assign to a service call as a technician. And it also allows this user to access the B1 Service mobile app, which we will be showing on later today. So this is an important configuration step to make sure that your technicians are set up properly. Alrighty. So now that we have gone through a lot of the setup and configuration and gotten all that going, we can actually start utilizing the service module here. And we're going to start with equipment cards. So jumping into SAP, we're going to actually, if you remember, we turned on that setting to auto-generate equipment cards. And we're going to go right here to Sales AR, and we're going to create a new invoice. And we're going to create this for Rossetti here. And we'll enter that color printer item I was just showing you that is serialized, and we'll enter a price of $100. Okay. And again, we are in 10.0, so you may notice down here your add button looks a little bit different. This is a new feature in 10.0 where you can add in new, add in view, or add in close. But I'm going to go ahead and click add and close. So I want to complete this order with a customer. We're going to invoice them. And as I said, since this is defined as a serialized item, SAP is going to prompt us for serial numbers. So all the serial numbers I have for this item already in inventory are over here on the left-hand side under available serial numbers. I'm just going to choose the first one. This is the one I'm going to be delivering to the customer and put it in my selected serial numbers column. One of the features of SAP is that in a lot of service-based industries, equipment will come with 2 serial numbers on it, one usually from the manufacturer, and then one is an internal like asset tag. And in a lot of businesses, when they actually pick the item out of inventory, that's when they define the asset tag. So we're going to define this here right now, just put another serial number that we want to make sure we have on this piece of equipment before it goes out the door. And we'll just do this as color printer demo. There we go. And we'll update. And once we have those serial numbers defined, we can finish adding our invoice here. And as soon as that got added, that auto-generate of equipment cards fired off, and SAP already created the equipment card for us with that information. The equipment cards can be accessed under the service module here, but I'm also going to just pull it up right here from my common functions because I use it so often. We'll navigate to the last run, and here's that information, that piece of equipment we just put on that invoice. All the serial number information came over, the business partner information came over. Under the address, we have address information for where this machine is located. One of the most useful fields I have found on the equipment card, especially in a service-based industry, let's say you're selling to a hospital or you have a lot of printers or machines at a university. You may need to define exactly where this machine is located because you might have 10 or 12 units on site. So let's just say this is in the CEO office on the 2nd floor. Great. So now we have our location in here where this machine is actually located at the client site. We see tabs for service calls, which we're going to get into in a little bit here. We'll see that a service contract already got created, and Hannah's going to touch on how that happened. But we already have this equipment card on a service contract, which is great because, again, it's automation in the system that allows us to not have to manually enter data. Under the sales data tab here, we do have our buyer information. But we also have links to the invoice this item was sold on, as well as the delivery if it exists. So that's great insight and visibility into your system right here from the equipment card. Also under the transactions tab, anywhere this serial number was used on a document is going to pull in here. So we already know the invoice is linked, but maybe we want to know when we actually brought this into our inventory and which vendor we bought it from. So we can see that this color printer and that specific serial number was purchased back on April 14th. So again, great insight and visibility into your system. And as always, you do have the attachments tab to attach maybe a spec document or some sort of agreement with the customer that you want to attach here. You do have a technician field. So maybe there's a specific technician that usually services this machine or works really well with this client that you want to define. You do have statuses up here that are defined for you. So active is obviously, this is an active piece of equipment, but you do have other statuses you can utilize to terminate or bring in equipment back into the shop to repair, for instance. One of the settings I mentioned was on earlier is the ability to add multiple business partners to a equipment card. And that's right here under this ellipses function button. If we click that, we can add additional business partners to this. And if we were to change this to a sales and purchasing equipment card type, we can actually assign a vendor here as well. So again, it's great flexibility in the system to be able to define who's working with this piece of equipment and make sure you have all that important data linked together. Alrighty, so now that I have our equipment card set up, defined in the system, we're gonna hop over to Hannah, who's gonna dive deeper into service contracts.
Okay, thank you, Ben. I do see we have a question in the chat that we can address before we move on to the service contracts.
Alrighty. No, you cannot add additional statuses to the equipment cards. Those statuses are all defined by SAP. They don't allow you to define more on that field, at least.
And but as an alternative, can you add UDF on a service contract on equipment card? Sorry.
Yes, yes. So if you wanted to do, your own statuses for those equipment, or if you wanted to do something like a terminated reason field, or terminated reason status, you could add a UDF to meet that requirement. Yes.
Great, thank you.
Okay, great. So now let's move on to service contracts. And just for a moment, we can go back over to the demo environment whenever we. Okay. So you may be wondering, what is a service contract and how is it used in the system? So it's a document in SAP that determines the type of service for which a business partner is eligible for. So as you can see here, this service contract was automatically created.
Hannah, are you? I don't think you're clicking right now.
While we get my self-control, I'll just talk about the service contracts a little bit more.
Go ahead, Hannah. You should have control now.
Okay, wonderful. So there we go. So this is a service contract that was automatically created with the equipment card. So let's drill into this and we can see that direct link right there. That is very useful. You did hear me mention that they can be automatically created. So to set up that automated functionality in SAP, a couple conditions apply. So the first, in the general settings that Ben showed us earlier, we need to ensure that the auto create equipment card button is turned on. The other item that needs to be enabled is for the item that you would like to create automatic service contracts for, you need to have a warranty template defined here. So as Ben showed earlier with the templates, this will be used as the basis for the data that will then populate into the service contract. And as Ben also mentioned, it is the AR invoice or the delivery that will trigger the automatic creation of the service contract as well. So let's drill into an example service contract, and we can go through some of the fields as well as the functionality behind that. So for our example, we first, of course, had to enter our business partner. Some business partner master data would automatically populate as well. After giving it a name, we can come down to the general tab. So there's two service types in SAP. The first being warranty. This is the one that you want to select to enable the automatic creation functionality. There's regular as well, which can be allowed if you prefer to go the manual route. For contract type, there are 3 different options. So these are the 3 different types of coverage. Depending on what's selected here, you'll notice that the item tabs adjust as necessary. So since we have our serialized number selected here, we will be offered coverage for that specific item. However, we can select it by item group, or we can select it by business partner. So when we select business partner, you'll notice that the items tab actually grays out and is no longer accessible. That's because if we select business partner, all items that are sold to this business partner will then be eligible for service. So let's get this back up to our default that we are working with. The next option will be the warranty that you want to base it off of. So as Ben mentioned, there are a few. As you can see, there's bronze, gold, and silver. These are the 3 SAP out-of-the-box options. So no additional setup is needed. You could essentially just use the 3 that they provided. Each one has varying levels of service and coverage, but you're free to add more for your more specific scenarios. The next 2 fields are super important to service level agreements with our clients. So response time being how long you have until you need to respond to the service call, and resolution time being how long until you need to completely resolve the issue and ensure that your client is satisfied. So moving on, we have covered most of the general tab, but something else I do want to point out is this renewal reminder field. So by selecting this field, it can give us the reminder however many days, months, weeks in advance before this service contract expires. So then we can follow up with the client and see if they would like to extend that further. And that alert that you'll receive will actually appear in our inbox, and it'll look similar to this. So we've covered the general tab, items and coverage. Coverage we covered regarding the templates. So now moving on to attachments. A good way this can be utilized for the service contracts would be to upload a PDF of the actual contract and the agreements that you have between your company and your customer with your signatures. Moving on to the service call tab, this is where any service calls regarding the items specified in the items tab will appear. So this can give us a good overall view of how often this service contract is being utilized. Is the client using it? How many instances? As the technicians update their service calls, this will automatically be synced and give us automatic updates. And we can also check in on the status of the open service calls as well. So lastly, to wrap up the service contract and its functionality, we can utilize the recurring transactions tab. This will be a good option if you know once a year you have to go on site and service their printers. You want to do a general maintenance and testing to ensure everything's working as expected. So you can set up a template with those expected transactions, and anytime they occur, they will automatically sync here, and you can have insight into if they have posted, as well as how many times they have been posted in the system. So with wrapping up the service contract, there are 2 printing enhancements that we do want to show you today. So they are both new to SAP version 10.0. So before we do that, let's go to our service contract and give it a preview for our out-of-the-box PLD layout. So if you would like to print or email this layout, this is what it'll look like at the moment. If customizations are desired by our clients, contact us and we will be happy to assist you in doing so. So let's go to document printing. So as I said, new to 10.0, we now have the option to batch print service calls and service contracts. So by selecting service contracts, we can see a list of all of ours available. So let's just go ahead and select 2 from this week, and we would be able to batch print them. And while we're on the topic of batch printing, we also have functionality to batch email. So very similar, you select them, and let's go up to the email icon. And at this point, we can actually specify certain email groups that we have defined for our business partner contacts and specify who you'd like to send them to. So great. So as we move away from document printing, let's go into our print preferences. So This is another feature that you may already utilize in the system, but for different documents. So with our print preferences, at the time of document creation, you can specify certain actions to occur, such as printing or exporting to PDF. And as you can see here, we actually have quite a few service documents that are now available. So by selecting the service contract and exporting to PDF, we can now do that. So that concludes the two printing enhancements new to 10.0. If you have any questions about that or 10.0 features in general, we're happy to discuss that further.
All right, thank you, Hannah. So now that we have all of our configuration done, we have our equipment cards in the system that are tracking our equipment out in the field, we have our agreements with our customers set up so that we know the level of service we're going to provide, we can now actually start using the transaction in the service module, the service call. So we're going to jump right into working with the service call. And again, it can be accessed here under the service module menu. Additionally, to create a new service call, on the equipment card, I kind of brushed over the service calls tab before, but now that we're going to get into it, under the service calls tab, under the You Can Also button is the ability to create a service call right from the equipment card. So if a customer calls in and says, hey, I need service, they give you the serial number or the equipment information. You can look up that equipment card and easily get over to the service call window. We're going to go ahead and enter our serial number information here for this piece of equipment that we want to service. This pop-up here, I actually left it in here just so it doesn't scare anybody if you do start using this module. But SAP will notice creating a service call outside of normal working hours or on holiday based on how it's set up in your system. But you can click through this and continue onward. It's just a little warning message. So immediately when I brought over that equipment information, you see it all populates here. You'll also notice that the contract that piece of equipment is linked to the service call automatically, as well as the end date, which is important because if you are if you're going to be providing service, you want to make sure that you're not providing free service outside of contract dates. Additionally, when this contract pulled in, our response by and resolution time populated. So over here on the service contract, response by time and resolution time are defined typically in the template, but you can also define them on the service contract level if they're going to be different. But those determine your SLA usually in a service type business. So with those set, when this service call was created on a specific created on date and time, this response by and resolution time set as well for when we need to either respond for our first time or solve the problem so that we keep within our SLAs. Additionally, we do have call statuses. These ones are definable, so you can define new ones. Out of the box, SAP comes with open, pending, and closed. But you can see I added a couple others here that may be applicable to my business, such as arrived and dispatched. The call priority, high, medium, and low. And for this one, you're going to see why, but we're going to define this as a high priority. And then we can enter a subject. So let's just say the customer called in and the machine is on fire. Great. So I went ahead and added that service call. But there's a couple other areas where we can define information for this. What's the origin of this? And again, in service-based industries, this is really important to be able to track where your service calls are coming from. So we'll say this came in from a phone call. And then we have three other definable fields here: problem type, problem subtype, and call type. And we're going to define these as it's a printing problem, it's a problem with one of our products, and it's with one of our machines. You'll also notice here that I do have set up origins such as email and Facebook and Google reviews, and call types such as complaints and compliments. And I will show an example of this, but you can utilize the service call module without a piece of equipment linked to it. So maybe you want to track complaints from customers using the service module, and this is a great way to do it, to be able to track those complaints. And we'll walk through an example of that as well, but that's why I do have those types of origins and problem subtypes defined there. Under the Business Partner tab, we have address information that can be changed, as well as some contact information. The remarks is just a way for the dispatcher, whoever's creating the service call, to communicate with the technician. So bring some water. Great. Activities can be linked to service calls, and we'll show that as it relates to maybe handling a complaint. Solutions. So the solutions knowledge base in SAP, let me go ahead and close this equipment card here. The solutions knowledge base in SAP is located right over here, and it allows you to find solutions for problems that you've had in the past for specific items. And where this becomes really useful is SAP gets smarter as time goes on. So anytime you set up a service call and you define specific problem types and problem subtypes, whenever you solve that equipment card with a specific linked solution, SAP will remember that. So now anytime you create a service call for this item, and it has these specific problem types and problem subtypes, and again, those are all definable. If the user clicks recommend here, SAP is going to say, oh, in the past, these two solutions were used. So we can go ahead and add these here, as it might help the technician in the field to see what was used in the past to solve this type of problem. Related documents, you can attach documents to service calls, any document in the system. Resolution will be utilized by our technician in the field. We do have a history tab, which tracks everything that happens with the service call. And finally, the scheduling tab. The scheduling tab turns into a grid when that multiple scheduling of service calls is turned on. We're going to go ahead and add a technician here. And again, like I said earlier, if we define in the roles on the employee master data, who is a technician, it will define our list here for us. So we're going to assign this to Elizabeth Cameron. And we're going to send her out at not 5 a.m. That's way too early. 5 p.m. Today, and we expect this to take about an hour. We'll set our location here. Choose the customer address. We can set a reminder up for 15 minutes beforehand and displaying calendar, which is, we'll see that in the mobile app here in a moment. But again, with multiple scheduling turned on, you can add additional rows to this and assign multiple technicians to go out. Maybe you want to send Elizabeth Cameron today to go put out the fire. And then maybe next week you want to send somebody out to check up on the client. So you do have those options. We're going to go ahead and update this. And now that we have our service call created, we're going to jump over into a day in the life of a service technician. Alrighty, so I'm going to go ahead and quickly log out here. So SAP comes with, recently actually, I believe in the past couple of years, they released the SAP B1 Service mobile app, which can be set up and be used by any user in the system that has a professional license, a limited CRM license, or there is a mobile service license that can be utilized as well that only gives users access to the mobile application, but is a fraction of the cost of the other licenses. But we're going to go ahead and log in with the same credentials we would use to log into the SAP client. And we immediately get to this landing page here where we have our service calls, and you can see the service call we just created here. Machine is on fire that we need to deal with, high priority, but we'll get into all that. So we have our calls here listed out by dates and times. We have abilities to filter by statuses, so maybe we want to see all or just our open calls, as well as priority statuses. If we were to click on a call and start working it, so we'll go into this call we just created here. We got this notification. We see, oh, there's a machine on fire. This is high priority. All right, first thing I want to do, I want to check my service contract and check the end date for this customer. All right, we're good till 2023, and they have the golden warranty. So we know we want to be providing the best, really good service to this customer. We're going to go ahead and check into this. We're not going to check in first. Sorry. There's great functionality in the app to actually route you to the service call. So here under the address, I don't know where I'm going. I'm going to go ahead and click on that address there. I see it's over in Scottsdale. And we do have the option to go right into Apple Maps or Google Maps and route ourselves to that service call. So once we drive there, we can go ahead and check in. And we'll set our start time, 5 p.m. today. That sounds good. So now we can start working on the call. And as we're working, we can enter remarks into the field, into the service call of what we're doing on this call. So let's say put out fire and ordered new machine. Great. So we started working on this call. We've been on site. We dealt with the client's issue. You'll notice down here on this ticket details screen, we do have these three fields for job ID and sub-job ID. And I left these in here because those are UDFs on this service call. And those can be showing up in mobile if you wish, so that you can utilize those through the mobile app as well. So we're working on this call. Machine's fried. Maybe we want to take a photo of the machine. There's a button up here to take a photo. So we're doing a little screenception here. But we want to take a picture of the machine to show that it was, totally destroyed. Maybe we want to view service history too and see, hey, has this happened in the past? No, not for this machine. So this is the first call for this machine. But I will open up a ticket here where we can see some service history. All right, so we're continuing to work. Let's set our duration here, and we'll say we were on site for 1 hour. Great. All right, so we worked on the machine. We got that issue, the immediate issue sorted out, but now we need to order a new machine for the customer. Under here, under this blue function button down here, you get a lot more options. So maybe we want to enter a resolution for this call. So we'll click the edit button here and we'll say put out fire and ordered new machine. Client happy. Great. So we entered our resolution there, so that will come back into the service call when we close it out. But if we go back under here, we also have the option to view common solutions. So maybe we needed to utilize this and say, oh, of course, we should put the fire out with a fire extinguisher. But we see those common solutions that we linked to the service call earlier show up here in the app. And now we need to order a new machine for the customer. So we can actually create a sales order right through the mobile app. We'll go ahead and click the plus sign up here. It's going to pull in our business partner information for this service call. We'll go ahead and click on items. You do have barcode scanning functionality, so if you wanted to scan a barcode, you could do that. Again, we're going to do some screenshotting there. But I know they want to just use the same item as before, so we're going to order them another color printer.
Hey Ben, we just had a quick question in the chat. Is this functionality SAP Business One or FSM? This is the native SAP Business One service app. Out of the box, it is not. I'm not sure what is FSM, but this is a native SAP app.
Yes, thank you, Oren. All right, so we've added our new color printer here, and we can define shipping information and all that, just like you can do in the B1 client, but we'll go ahead and create this sales order here. Okay, so we got our sales order added here. If we were to refresh, we see it there. So we've ordered them a new machine. We've entered our resolution. The last thing we want to do is we want to schedule a follow-up because we're going to need to come back here. So we'll go ahead and click follow-up. So this will just create another line on our service call for the same technician to go back at a later time and maybe install the machine or check in on the client. So we'll click yes there. All right. So we've created our follow-up. We've done our resolution. We've solved the problem. We can now click next. And we're going to go ahead and close this service call out through the mobile app here. We'll apply our sales order that we created. We get our ticket summary here, which shows everything that happened on the service call. When we click done, we're going to be prompted, do you want to close out this service call? We'll go ahead and click yes. Great. So the ticket has been successfully closed. We solved the issue. Immediately, you'll actually see right behind here that we got a notification that that ticket has been solved. So those, again, come with the system out of the box. We get our ticket summary here, and you do actually have the option, if you click the ellipses button up in the right-hand corner, maybe we carry a Bluetooth printer with us and the customer wants us to print out a copy of the ticket summary or generate a report PDF that can be set up. There is also an option to enable signature taking on service calls so that you can capture a signature at call close. So we'll go back to our home screen here. A couple other features I wanted to point out in the mobile app before we jump back into the B1 client and see that service call all closed out there. We do have calendar sync options. So up in the top right-hand corner, we can click the sync button, and it will sync all the calls I currently have on my phone with my calendar in my phone here. So we can see calls that we need to go to by date as well in a calendar view. Additionally, we do have a KPI option, and this is customizable, but these are your KPI dashboards. So at the end of the day, I want to see, okay, how many service calls have I closed this month so far? 8. It's down from last month. Top 5 fixed items. Again, these are out-of-the-box reports, but they can be customized to give you an end-of-the-day report or other information for your service technicians. All righty. And finally, the app does come with offline options. So this would be if you're going out to a remote site to service a machine or work with a customer. Maybe you want to download the data beforehand while you're in service. You can then use that data offline, work your service calls just like we did. And then when you reconnect or get back into a service area, you can upload the data later. So the mobile app does come, the service mobile app comes with a lot of functionality to enable you to work service calls, close them out, and allow your field technicians to manage calls regularly. Alrighty.
Awesome, Ben. Couple of questions. Seems like the mobile app triggers some great questions. First question is, what different mobile devices does Business One Mobile work on?
It comes native on Android and iOS devices, and both of the downloads for the Service mobile app can be found in the Google Play Store or the iOS App Store. It is important to note that you download the proper app. SAP B1 actually comes with 3 different mobile apps. The standard SAP B1 mobile app, there's a sales app. The one I just demoed is the SAP B1 service app. So make sure you're finding the right one.
Great. And the service app and the sales app are, at this point, in this current moment, are available only for HANA clients, but we reach out to SAP in one of the next patches, since now SQL already have service layer, it will be available also for SQL clients. So hold on for only a few months.
Yes.
One more question, Ben. Can you add custom fields to the completed in the mobile app?
So I did not test that, but UDFs do show up as I showed that, and UDFs can be made mandatory. So we can test that and get back to you, Fiona. But if I know SAP, you can make those UDFs mandatory, and they won't allow you to close the service call unless there's a value put in there. But we will test that and confirm for you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Alrighty. So a couple more things here. So I just refreshed this service call here. If we go into related documents here, that sales order we created is linked here. And maybe we wanted to add a return request. So we want to be able to bring that broken machine back in. So we can come in here and add a return request to this service call as well. The resolution we entered is also here. The last thing I wanted to point out is, if you remember,
And Ben, just going back to the related documents, one other thing, you know, apart from sales order and marketing documents, when you click a new document, you can do both, actually, AR type of document.
Oh, yes.
And also AP, inventory transfers, and things of that nature. So all of those related documents, if needed, could be linked to this service scope.
Yes, it's a great point, Oren. Great. And then the last thing I wanted to point out, history tab is getting populated with things as the call is being worked. Under the scheduling tab, when we click that follow-up to come back at a later time today, it created the entry here for us. And again, this can be modified if you want to come back next week or whatever, but it does leave the service call open. With multiple scheduling turned on, you can't close the service call until all the rows are closed. But for right now, we're going to go ahead and we're going to say, oh, we don't need to go back. So we'll just go ahead and close that row out and click update. And then we'll go ahead and close the service call. All right, so that service call is completed. And the last thing I wanted to show, because I know not everybody is a field service industry. Oh, there's our notification again. SAP always telling us what's going on. I wanted to do a quick example of how you can utilize the service call module, because we do have a little bit of time left before we close out today. But maybe Earthshaker Corporation called in, and they had a complaint for us. So we'll just say complaint, not happy with service. And we don't have a contract. We're not utilizing service contracts in this case, but we just want to track complaints. And we'll say this was on a Google review. It's a complaint. Yep. It's regards to our service, and we'll put it in a complaint. We can assign a handled by here, or this is also where we can assign a queue for a group of team members to reach out. We'll go ahead and click add here. This is where you might want to utilize the activities. So maybe, like I said, you're using service calls to track your compliments and complaints. If we wanted to add an activity to this and say, hey, we called the client and we resolved this issue, we can easily link a activity to this service call. Provided 5% discount on next order, or whatever that may be. But a way for you to really make sure that you're communicating with your clients well and track this all in your ERP system. And again, you do have that follow-up option here. So maybe we did this today and we want to create a follow-up to come back and check in with the client again and make sure that we are meeting their expectations. Great. So any questions? I know we covered a lot there with the mobile app and the service call, but I'm going to pass it back over to Hannah now to touch on some reporting out of the box SAP, and then we'll open it up for final questions.
Okay, thank you, Ben. So with that, now that we've covered a lot of the documents in the service module, let's wrap things up and show how we can analyze the data that they provide.
Oh,
so let's hop back over to our demo. Thank you. Wonderful. So first we want to look at a couple features in the cockpit. So as a user, this is the first thing you see when you log in. And let's go ahead and check out the out-of-the-box KPIs. So I know Ben showed us some of those in the mobile app, but let's go ahead and add one to our cockpit.
And those KPIs are really available only for the HANA, right? That's the one thing we're really showing that's only related to the HANA, right?
Yes.
That's why HANA is showing that.
Ah, I see what you did there.
Good one. So let's update our cockpit, and as you can see, that widget that we that KPI that we wanted to enable is now showing here. So what this is doing is showing all service calls in the system that have a status other than closed. So this could be open, pending, etc. So another feature in our cockpit is the common functions. So you may have noticed throughout our webinar that Ben and I were utilizing this. So this is a good way to put your most frequently used reports or documents in your cockpit and have easy access. So if you're a service technician, you may want to include service calls here. If at some point you think that you have too many things in here, you can clean it up just as easily as you can drag things over. So now let's take a look at the
Hannah, we have a quick question. Can you use service call without a serial number to plan an installation and then link to the equipment card once you know the serial number?
It would depend on your process flow, because you would have to have the equipment card in the system to be able to link back to it on the service call. You can create the service call as like an installation service call for a customer and not assign a serial number. Through the mobile app, there is barcode scanning to enter a serial number. So we would have to test that and make sure it links back to the service call in that case. But I believe there would be some options there to plan the installation before the equipment card is actually linked.
Yeah, but generally speaking, you could create a service call without a serial number and then attach the serial number later.
Yeah. So you can do that through B1 without issue. I'm not sure if you can do it through the mobile app. So if the technician goes on site and is setting up the machine and he now can scan the barcode, I'm not sure if the mobile app will allow you to link it back at that point. So we can check that for you, though.
Great question. Sorry, Hannah, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So as we were saying, so there's out-of-the-box reports. So I know we're approaching the hour, so let's first take a look at some reports that would be useful to the employees on the field servicing clients. So one being my open service calls. At the beginning of their day, they can take a look at this and see an overview of all their service calls that they need to work on. By double-clicking on the priority column, they can then sort by high priority and decide that they need to tackle the high priority service calls first. Complementing this report would be the overdue service calls report. So if you are an employee who provides service to clients, you know how critical it is to honor your service level agreements and keep your customers happy. So ideally, we don't want anything in this, but this is a good second check to make sure that nothing's slipping through the cracks, and if there are overdue service calls, that they can definitely address those. So now switching perspectives from a field technician to maybe someone who's in more of a managerial role, or who's someone who is supervising those employees who are actually providing the service to customers. We can take a look at the service calls by queue report. So let's run this wide open. And what this report will do will essentially provide good insight into the workload of the employees. So if we collapse this, we can see the 3 queues that we showed you earlier, and we see a count of how many service calls they're working on. So the miscellaneous queue definitely has the most. By expanding it, we can see some more details into the specifics. And at this point, we notice that the miscellaneous queue, maybe those technicians are getting a little behind on tickets. So then what we can do is go over to the queue and assign another member to the queue to assist with tickets. So there we go. So that was reporting some of the features within the cockpit. Then we touched on a few of the out-of-the-box reports. I know we have a few more, but we just wanted to provide a couple examples of who can utilize them and how. So with that, we have put together some documentation for you. For the equipment cards and the service contracts, we have some documentation on how we can auto-create both of those, as well as working with them in general. As Ben mentioned, the service app is available for both iOS and Android. So we do have some installation and setup instructions for that included. If you recall back to some of the new 10.0 printing enhancements that I showed you, we do have an SAP video that is a really good reminder if you want to refer back to that. As always, we have our tips and tricks LinkedIn page, so we'd really appreciate it if you join that if you would like to see tips more frequently. And the last one is always Google.
Yeah, and Ben, do you mind copying those links and put them in the chat here, just in case somebody from the audience may want to drill down right after this? You know,
Yes.
and we're gonna of course send the recording of this session of today and the presentation in a few days next week. But in the meanwhile, we'll share it here in the chat as well.
Yeah, let me get those pulled out for you.
Wonderful. So to conclude the webinar today, we just want to briefly go through a summary. I know we covered a lot, so we'll just do a brief recap. So we started off with the master data. So we point out the data that's already in your company and how we can utilize that within the service module. Next, we discussed the equipment cards and the service contracts and the relationship between the two. We also outlined how you can prompt the automatic creation of both, and how that can be useful with serialized items. Next is the service mobile app. Ben gave us a day in the life of a service technician. So that was very cool. So if you have any questions about that, Ben has dropped that documentation in the chat. And then lastly, we wrapped up with reporting. We took a look at the cockpit where users see the first thing that they see when they log in every day, as well as some out-of-the-box reports, both from a service technician perspective as well as a supervisor perspective. So with that concludes the presentation of the webinar, but we do have a few minutes left for feedback and questions. And thank you all again for coming today.
Yes. Thanks again. Like we said in the beginning, the service module is a little bit underutilized or unknown. So we're really happy that we got the opportunity to share what comes with SAP out of the box and how you can better utilize it to improve your business and expand your business. So any questions or thoughts, discussion?
Yeah. And if there are any questions that you don't have now, but you come up with them maybe a couple days from now, we have included our emails at the end of this presentation, so feel free to reach out to us.
Awesome. Ben and Hannah, excellent work covering the service module. Thank you so much. And as you said, maybe we'll wait a minute and see if anyone else have any questions. Feel free to unmute yourself if you do, or type it in the chat. Anyone? All right, so it was so good that there are no further questions. So again, thank you so much, Ben and Hannah. Thank you for our audience on Facebook Live. Thank you for everybody who may see this recording weeks, months, and years from now. Excellent work, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good Friday, a good weekend.
Yep. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.